Before I start this Raw review, you may notice that my camera setup has improved ever so slightly. That's because as part of my birthday presents I got a lovely little tripod for my mobile phone which I've been recording everything on. So even though you're going to see, for example, the ring light that is also there, I do feel it looks a little bit better, don't you think? This week's Raw saw a much anticipated return, a surprise return which they very nearly kept quiet, and some very high quality wrestling. Leave a like below and we will jump straight in. Raw starts, as is becoming tradition, with our WWE Champion Drew McIntyre. He's on the road to Dolph Ziggler at Extreme Rules and he wants to know what the stipulation is going to be for his match. Maybe you shouldn't have let Dolph Ziggler decide it, and then you may have had more chance of knowing ahead of time. Dolph refuses to answer straight away, but does bring out someone that he says Drew McIntyre has left behind. That someone is Heath Slater, who hasn't been seen since he was released in April, and in fact to my knowledge hadn't been seen for a while before then. Heath Slater looks different, notably more buff, but in addition to that more serious, slower cadence. He delivers a really intense, strong promo about Drew McIntyre not being there for him as he was for Drew McIntyre. Heath Slater is someone that I really believe will go far, regardless of where he ends up. Part of that is the fact that he has Jinder Mahal and Drew McIntyre as perfect examples of what path to take now he has been released. Apparently the trick is getting really jacked, as he has already started, so good work Heath, look forward to seeing you on our screens again soon. The end result of his promo here is to set up a match between Slater and McIntyre. It is the shortest match on the card by quite a margin, 20 seconds at most. Heath Slater gets a few hits in when Dolph distracts Drew McIntyre, but ultimately eats a Claymore, and that is that. Dolph Ziggler attacks him after the match, but McIntyre breaks that up, and the two brothers, two members of 3MB, stand tall at the end. It's not often I say this. It was a shame Jinder Mahal wasn't there. If you're expecting to see a lot more of Heath Slater or that he's been re-signed in some way, I wouldn't. This to me was a one-time thing. He is still under a no-compete clause, which means he can't compete anywhere else. However, this was a brief payday and he is someone who hasn't burnt any bridges on his way out. According to Heath himself, he believes he deserved to be released because he wasn't trying hard enough, he wasn't taking it seriously. Judging by what we saw today, that has changed dramatically. It is not impossible that after this performance he will be offered a new contract, but I would be surprised. Sasha Banks and Bayley are out next, who are full-time every roster at the moment, and all power to them. They cut a promo on the rest of the division. Sasha Banks says, and I'll read this verbatim, "We are taking over the show. We are getting all the gold, and we are taking over the whole damn company. Has anything in wrestling been more true ever?" They are interrupted by Asuka. The idea here is that the main event tonight will be Bayley versus Asuka, champion versus champion, but that match is not now. Asuka introduces the returning Kairi Sane to have her back, and the end result is Kairi Sane versus Sasha Banks, which is a very good match that is eventually interrupted by Bayley to give Kairi Sane the disqualification win. It's not often Sasha Banks loses a match anymore, even just by DQ. Now obviously there are a lot of rumours out there that Kairi Sane's time wrestling for the WWE has come to an end. However, she does still have some dates left to wrestle before she moves permanently back to Japan, particularly as an ambassador for an upcoming NXT Japan that would have been happening as we speak if not for the current circumstances preventing it. To my knowledge, there will be another contract offer made to Kairi Sane to try and convince her to stay. The WWE, however, are not confident that they will be able to do that with the money that is currently on offer. There are a couple of backstage segments back to back. Aleister Black is attacked backstage and has a Rey Mysterio mask thrown on his face. I was convinced a little bit at the start, but this is clearly Seth Rollins taking him out before the match in that dastardly heel way that he does. This was followed by a segment where the Big Show tried to convince the Viking Raiders to be a bit more serious by slapping them in the chest, which worked. Wouldn't convince me, I've got to say. I would probably crumple pretty hard from a slap in the chest from the Big Show, let's be honest. Once again this week, no sign of the Street Profits, who did upset WWE management a couple of weeks ago by going through the crowd for their entrance. We will see them again soon. They are of course the Raw Tag Team Champions, and I expect when they do return, a big deal will be made of that, leading into the Andrade Angel Garza match that is long overdue. And by long overdue, I mean about a day overdue. Our next segment sees the return of the KO show and of course the man himself, Kevin Owens, who is clearly responsible for everyone wearing masks backstage, I tell you that. He was very keen on making that happen. So, he is setting up the KO show. He invites his guest Seth Rollins down to the ring, reluctantly as ever, and throws a load of chairs out of the ring because Seth Rollins is there, but not welcome. Seth Rollins cuts his usual sermon, I don't think we can call them promos anymore, but he's interrupted by Rey Mysterio and Dominic. Rey was supposed to be facing Seth Rollins and Buddy Murphy with Aleister Black by his side. However, without Aleister Black, he seems to be leaning towards bringing Dominic Mysterio in. However, before that can happen, Kevin Owens volunteers and the match is made. Not just that, but they add some stakes to this one, it being that they get to choose the stipulation for Extreme Rules if they win, and Seth Rollins gets to choose it if they lose. I kind of think both sides would have picked the same stipulation. The match has quite a busy finish, so Seth tries to escape with Dominic, essentially kidnapping him in the traditional manner. Aleister Black will return, come down the ramp and face down Seth, which causes a major distraction. Dominic uses that distraction to blind Murphy with a thumb to the eye. Eyes are a big deal at the minute. Murphy is then rolled back in and beaten, Team Mysterio picking up the win. It's busy, but it is very satisfying, and sometimes overbooked isn't necessarily the worst thing. However, they then tell you what the stipulation is going to be, and as I've mentioned in these reviews for a couple of weeks now, it is going to be an eye for an eye. The WWE have clarified that in order to win this match, you have to remove the eyeball from the socket. Do you remember Hell in a Cell a few years ago when Jeff Hardy had a screwdriver through his ear? I still haven't watched that. I'm not the most squeamish guy, but I don't want to see things penetrating things that don't need penetrating. Someone's going to lose an eye. Also, I don't think I'm going to be able to handle iPad Seth. He's already way too attractive. We move on to our United States Championship segment, and MVP and Bobby Lashley hype up the future of the United States Championship while downgrading the future of Apollo Crews at the same time. They introduce a brand new United States Championship, which takes place and MVP holds on to, despite the fact that the United States Champion isn't there in attendance. That's a decision. Representing his interests are Ricochet and Cedric Alexander, who put on a tag match, put on their usual high-flying motions, and I've got to say, I'm very glad to see these two on TV, even though it did take Apollo Crews interestingly vanishing in order to make it happen. They do put on a great tag match. Lashley, however, is too much for the both of them and picks up the win for his team. As regards the United States Championship, it is different. I'll put a picture in at this point so you can make your own decision. Personally, I worry that on a bright day it's going to burn down a couple of towns. But I'm not the target audience, being a Brit. Ric Flair is at Raw again. Brave man, brave is the word. Yep, brave, definitely. He's there advocating for Randy Orton, who is also there and doesn't really need advocating for, but he will be tagging with Andrade and Garza against the Big Show and the Viking Raiders. He being Randy Orton, not Ric Flair. Ric Flair doesn't wrestle. Oh god, I hope Ric Flair just doesn't wrestle again. You never can tell with Ric Flair. Either way, Randy Orton cuts a promo on Andrade and Garza where he essentially pulls rank and really shows that he's the experienced journeyman here. I really like Randy Orton in this particular facet of character that he's chosen to push. During the actual match, he takes things into his own hands, literally holding on to Angel Garza by the throat to ensure that Garza concentrates. And I've got to say, this is very much the Viper character, the legend killer. He's really gone back to a wonderful place where I feel this is the best Randy Orton has ever been. Long may it continue, and Garza and Andrade both benefited from it. The match itself was a solid match. Orton wasn't particularly involved, neither was the Big Show. However, Orton did sneak the win at the end. If you're a New Japan fan, this felt very much like any six-man tag match that involved Kazuchika Okada, because you get that feeling that this man who has had multiple world championships, whereas very few other people have, is someone that has to be respected and everything is built around them. And every now and then, that is a very good thing. Backstage, Asuka and Kairi Sane state that if they get the win, by which I mean Asuka beats Bayley later in that night, they will be challenging Sasha Banks and Bayley for the Women's Tag Team Championships the next week on Raw. That will be a tremendous match, and once again, the women's divisions on all of these different brands are leading the way and really getting me excited to watch every week. As usual, we get a large selection of back-to-back backstage segments, which is not as easy to say as it may sound, as we head into the third hour. This does tend to be when they just throw a load of things back to back to keep the story going. First, we get the confirmation that Ruby Riott will be facing Billie Kay instead of Peyton Royce. I mentioned this in the Sportskeeda Facebook Lives that we do Monday at 5 o'clock my time, 12 o'clock EST. Just after that, we get MVP trying to sow division between Cedric Alexander and Ricochet when he essentially accuses Cedric Alexander of being Ricochet's sidekick. Ricochet, of course, has been referred to as a superhero on many occasions. Finally, we get our 24/7 championship segment for the week, which is the shortest segment of all time as regards that particular belt. Tozawa chases after R-Truth. He comes across Randy Orton, who saves his friend by pointing Tozawa in a different direction. As the ninjas pass by, he does a little bow, and I've got to say I love Randy Orton. Our main event is champion versus champion, and there tonight, Nikki Cross, who is on commentary, was originally going to be thrown out, but Tom Phillips does stand her corner and ensure that she can be there to cause a bit of havoc. This is the first time we've seen Nikki Cross without Alexa Bliss for a long time, and I've got to say, every now and then it's nice to have them separate, just as a reminder that they are separate and they do things separately. That can be a very good thing. Nikki, as you might expect, leading into the match becomes very animated, throwing a lot of hate Bayley's way and instructing Samoa Joe to hold her back, which Samoa Joe does reluctantly, shall we say. Unfortunately, she is ejected early in the match due to altercations with Bayley and Sasha Banks. As you might expect, it is overbooked, but once again, not necessarily too overbooked. There is a very good match here that I suggest that everyone go out and watch. It is high quality and really a lot of fun. Sasha Banks and Kairi Sane are involved, but minimally early on, though they do get more involved in the finish. Credit to Bayley as well, who takes a powerful backhand in the face during this match and keeps on going. There is a short segment that was edited out where she takes a moment to recover and gets checked on, but ultimately, a hit that hard, you're gonna feel it, and Asuka felt it as well. Everything slowed down for a second because you could tell Asuka was really concerned she'd done serious damage. What I will say is that Bayley, absolute trooper, just kept going. Shortly after this, she rolls to the outside and gets distracted by the sight of Nikki Cross banging on the perspex. Apparently whoever threw her out did a terrible job of it. Security in the WWE, as always, absolutely useless. This distraction does serve as an opportunity for Asuka to take advantage. Sasha Banks does try and get involved and cause a DQ win for Asuka, but Kairi Sane spears her from the other side of the ring, slightly misses her cue, but still manages to look good doing it. The win goes to Asuka in a match that had a lot of Easter egg moments to old matches between the two and a lot of old NXT matches in general. Great match, really recommend watching it, and it does mean we get the Tag Team Championship match next week. This was undoubtedly an extremely good Raw, not just because of the amount of big names on it, but how they were used. Orton and Big Show were used to help further the case of the Viking Raiders and Andrade and Garza. That's a good way to develop the feud for them, and Orton did look great. Seth Rollins continued in his position, along with Rey Mysterio, of putting over Buddy Murphy, Aleister Black, and eventually, as we all know, Dominic Mysterio. Humberto Carrillo has sort of vanished at the moment, but I have alluded to the idea that he may be joining Team Rollins, and I feel that may be a good move for him. In addition to that, we had a great main event, Sasha Banks and Bayley, as always, doing great things, Asuka and Kairi Sane delivering in their matches as well, and indeed we got a lower card women's match too, which is a good thing. It means they can further the storyline for the Iconics, who've recently returned, need to be on TV regularly, as well as Ruby Riott developing towards a new team with Liv Morgan, even though they haven't quite reached that moment yet, and Liv Morgan is once again not on TV. As regards Drew McIntyre, he got a very strong opening segment. His personal ratings are going to be through the roof, because anytime you open a show with someone, their ratings are fantastic, as you've seen with Becky Lynch in the past as well. However, with Drew McIntyre, I do feel this feud needs a bit of leverage to it. The Heath Slater promo was fantastic, but didn't really add much to McIntyre versus Ziggler. Negatives, it's hard to say, especially when you consider that we have Ricochet and Cedric Alexander on TV for the first time in ages. But for example, Ruby Riott Billie Kay was drastically short. There were many back-to-back backstage segments, and overall I feel Zelina Vega needs more to do. You can tell I'm nitpicking. This was a very good Raw. My Twitter poll this week gave Raw a 43% good rating and a 37% great rating, which is a tremendous positive, especially when you consider that people are naturally inclined quite often to tick the bad box, even when a show isn't necessarily bad, in the same way that people will tick great if it isn't necessarily great. People are extreme, what can I say? I think I would lean more towards great personally, rather than good, but I do feel that this may be the start of something even more positive. If they can keep this up, this has been fantastic. However, I'm not sure if they can. Let me know what you thought of Raw down in the comments. Please leave a like on this video, share it if you've enjoyed it. I have been Tom Collihew, and thank you for joining me.